Trust diversification even when it's hard. um, so there, everything has an emoji these days. So this slide has lots of emojis. Okay. The point of it is that diversification is not a magic bullet that makes you feel good all the time. Sometimes you're going, what on earth is Michelle or my advisor? What are they doing? Is diversification really that good? In fact, we have a name for it called S&P envy, because people are often looking at the S&P 500 and going, hey, how come I'm not getting that return when the market's up? On the other hand, when the market's down, no one says, oh, well, I lost less. So if we go through the chart here and we look at the years 2000 to 2002, which is when I started my career, the diversified portfolio was down 15.7%. The S&P 500 was down 40%. What would the average person say? I lost money. Not that I lost less money. 2003 to 2007, the diversified portfolio was actually outperforming 91% compared to 82.9%. Diversification worked. However, if we keep going, 2008, which I just described to you, down 28.5% for the diversified portfolio, down 37% for the S&P 500. Again, I lost money, not I lost less. 2009 to 2019, the market was up, and a diversified portfolio would also have been up, but just not as much. I didn't make as much. Then if we look at 2020, Q1, so that was a profound time. For me, I think of it in terms of my children's birthdays. They're both in March. And one, my eldest, his birthday was before everything got shut down. So there were donuts that were brought to his school for the class to share. And, he had a nice birthday dinner and everything like that. And then for my youngest, we were on lockdown. It was just us. And it was nice, but it was a completely different ballgame. No donuts, no classroom, no nothing. And it was a scary time. If you remember, it's hard. Sometimes I think we've all forgotten what it was like, but it was so uncertain. 2 weeks turned into a lot longer than that, many, many weeks, and even to some extent years. And during that first quarter, the diversified portfolio would have done 24%, been down 24%, and the S&P 500 would have been down 30%. It was a scary, scary time. But the government pumped money into the system, and Q2 2020 through 2021, we saw a 119% increase in the S&P 500 and a 69.8% increase in the diversified portfolio. Again, what's the takeaway for most people? I didn't make as much. Well, 2022 was a terrible year in a lot of respects. It was one of only a handful of times where the stock market and the bond market were both down. And when we think about this, it was terrible. We all felt horrible. But realistically, a diversified portfolio was down 15% and the S&P 500 was down 18%. So again, I lost money, but you really didn't lose as much. And then in 2023, and what's not shown on this chart is 2024, but in 2023, you see a positive return for both. Again, the S&P 500 did better. Well, this doesn't look really good for a diversified portfolio, does it? There's a lot of I lost money, I didn't make as much. But what is the bottom line? If we look at the bottom of this chart, if we would cheat and go to the tagline, diversification can work even when it feels like it's losing. Why is that? If we look at that total return for the S&P 500 over that entire period of time, 390.8%. The diversified portfolio would have been 391.4%. So the S&P 500 is 100% large US company stocks, and the diversified portfolio obviously contains a lot more than that. So managing risk more, and yet the return in this example was comparable. So even when it doesn't feel like it's working, crazy people like myself who are telling you to stay diversified, there's a reason.